Hey, welcome back to Church Unplugged. It's good to have you here. Today we are talking about something that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. Something we all see but don't always say out loud. Church politics. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Now let me just say this before we dive in. Not all church politics are toxic. Sometimes it's just how decisions get made. Who does what? How things stay organized. There's a kind of order that's needed, otherwise everything falls apart. But when that order starts feeling more like control than care, that's when it turns into something else. So today we are talking about the systems behind the sermons. The quiet power plays, the real messy humanity that happens in spaces that are supposed to be holy. Because pretending it doesn't exist hasn't helped anyone. And so I'm spilling it out today. Let's talk about the good. Let's start on a fair note. Politics is good. Church politics at its best is about stewardship. It's about people coming together to make decisions that keep a community healthy and sustainable. Like, think about a church board that's transparent. They talk openly about finances. They make sure leadership isn't just one person's vision, but a shared one. That's politics. But that's good politics. I think sometimes we forget that even in the early church, there were politics. The apostles had to decide who handled what, who took care of widows, how resources were shared. It wasn't glamorous, but it was necessary. When it is done right, politics can actually be a form of service, a structure that protects people, not power. The good kind of politics says we are accountable to each other. It builds trust instead of feeding egos. So church politics can be a good thing. The problem is when it stops serving the people and starts serving the system. Now let's move to the bad side of politics. Here's where it gets tricky, friends. The bad side. And I'm sure you know how leadership sometimes becomes less about shepherding and more about control. How a few voices dominate every decision and the rest, well, they just nod along. There is this thing that happens, the creation of an inner circle. The people who always get the call, who always get the mic. And then quietly, there's everyone else. Maybe you've been there. You love your church, you serve, you show up. But somehow, you are never really in the room where things happen. It is strange how something meant to unite can start dividing. And what hurts most is when loyalty gets mistaken for silence. You disagree, and suddenly you are not submissive. You raise a concern, and you are causing confusion. That's not community. That's control dressed up as unity. The truth is, bad church politics don't start with evil people. They start with unguarded egos. Good intentions mixed with insecurity, wrapped in a spiritual language. It is subtle, and that's what makes it dangerous. Now I want to talk about the ugly side of politics. The ugly side. The parts nobody wants to admit. The whispers. The gossip. The cover-ups. This is where politics stop being about leadership and start being about survival. Someone messes up, not just small stuff, but big moral failures. And instead of honesty, there is silence. Meetings behind closed doors. Carefully worded statements, damage control. Is heartbreaking because the same place that preached grace suddenly forgets how to practice it. I've met people who left church entirely not because they stopped believing in God, but because they couldn't believe how their church handled the truth. You know that feeling when your heart breaks and your faith feels caught in the crossfire. But it's real. It is ugly, but it is real. And the hazardous part is that people who speak up often get punished, while those who cover up get promoted. That's the kind of politics that rots from inside. Now, how can we rebuild trust? Knowing the good, the bad, and the ugly side of politics. I have good news for you. It doesn't have to end there. I have seen churches that have faced their mess honestly. Leaders who have stood up on stage and said, "We failed. We hate. We are sorry." And you could feel the room exhale. Transparency doesn't destroy a church. Pretending does. And rebuilding trust isn't a public relation project. It's a spiritual one. It looks like confession, like shared leadership, like letting younger or quieter voices have a say. When a church chooses honesty over image, something sacred happens. People start believing again, not just in God, but in each other. Maybe that's the kind of politics we need. Not power games, but grace games. Not hierarchy, but humility. And maybe, just maybe, it starts with us being honest about where we've been hurt and refusing to repeat it. And so you can take this away. If you've been burned by church politics, let me just say, I get it. You are not crazy. You are not bitter. You are just tired of the pretending. But don't give up on the idea of church. Because church, at its core, isn't a brand or a logo or a leadership team. It is people, imperfect people, trying to live out a project, love. And that's still worth fighting for. So maybe this week, ask yourself, what would a healthy church look like to me? One where power isn't feared but shared. Where questions aren't punished but welcomed. Because that's where change begins, with honest conversations like this. And so friends, thanks for tuning in to Church Unplugged. If something here resonated with you, share it with me. You can send this to a friend, your small group, even your pastor, if you are brave enough. Because the more we talk about it, the more we heal. Until next time, stay grounded, stay curious, and keep the faith. Catch you next time. Bye.